today. This weekend is action-packed. It's a smorgasbord. It's a salad bar. It's a all-you-can-eat buffet of MMA as we see Ronda Rousey make her return into a cage, and it ain't WWE, after 10 years, as well as Gina Carano make her return after 17 years in the main event of MVP's Netflix MMA card. But also, the UFC would not be outdone as they pulled out the big guns in the main event, where we will see Arnold Allen stepping in the octagon with Melquizael Costa. Did you like how I really hyped that up? All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy, Matt. And we are here to talk about two different cards going down this weekend. I'm going to cover the big three. The big three fights. And the only three fights to really take a look at this weekend's Netflix MVP MMA card. As well as we're going to take a look at the main and co-main event of the UFC's card. Which begs the question, how bad is this UFC card that I'm going to cover 3 fights on the Netflix card versus 2 on the UFC card? But that's how it goes down. Let's start out with MVP, Jake Paul's promotion, mostly known for boxing, dipping their toe, if you will, into MMA this weekend as they will spearhead an MMA card on Netflix, in which the main event, Ronda Rousey, will step into the cage with Gina Carano. Okay, I ain't gonna hold y'all on a whole lot of fights on this video. It's not gonna require a ton of breakdown. Ronda Rousey been out of the cage, I was about to say the octagon, for around 10 years. Gina Carano has been out of MMA or cage fighting for 17 years. The last time Gina Carano fought, she took a L to Cyborg. You know, one of the female GOATs. The last time Ronda Rousey stepped into a cage, she took a L to Amanda Nunes, one of the female GOATs, who also defeated Cyborg. And here we are. Look, man, Ronda Rousey, and I'm not really trying to shade her, but Ronda Rousey, I'm not saying that she is one, but she has the characteristics of a Karen. I'm going to be honest. Ronda Rousey is the MMA Karen, mixed martial arts Karen, and here's what I'm saying. Ronda Rousey's personality, much like a Karen, is where they find a subtle truth of a situation and twist it, stretch it, turn it, pause, and everything else to it to fit their own narrative. And then they put it out to the public or the police or the manager or whoever is running whatever establishment or neighborhood that they have an issue with to benefit themselves. So let's be honest about this. Ronda Rousey has waged war against the UFC and Dana White. Now, I'm super big on behind the scenes things. I spend a lot of my time watching a lot of documentaries, listening to a lot of podcasts, watching a lot of YouTube videos that talk about the behind the scenes of like the NBA. I'm not really always interested in the product that is presented on TV that we watch and cheer for, but how did we get there? I'm fascinated by the behind the scenes of MMA and how certain fights were made, what fighters were going through while they were having monumental moments in their career, right? Same thing with wrestling, same thing with football, same thing with soccer, same thing with Hollywood, with movies. I'm fascinated by this, right? And Ronda Rousey, the behind the scenes of her versus the UFC is, she goes to Dana years ago, or Dana goes to her and says that, hey, either Dana reached out, was like, hey, we want to try to make a huge fight between you and Gina Carano for our last show on ESPN before we go to Paramount, to kind of bookend that era. And Ronda Rousey was down with it. Or maybe Ronda reached out to Dana and said she wanted to fight, and he was like, let me get on the horn, and he got back with her and said, I got Gina. Either way, they were going to make a fight to end or cap the UFC ESPN era, in which Ronda Rousey was going to step back into the octagon against Gina Carano. This wouldn't have been a super good fight, but under the UFC's watch, this would have been huge. Ronda Rousey making her return to the UFC, everything would have been swelling and swirling about who will Ronda fight next if she gets the win? You know, will we lowball it and lock her in the cage with Holly Holm, or lock her in the cage with Miesha Tate? Or will we talk crazy, talk stupid, and try to put her in the cage with Amanda Nunes for a rematch so she can get her brains beat out? You know, will we try to put her in there against the two medalists from the Olympics, against Kayla Harrison, and watch her get her brains beat out? What are we going to do with her? And then also, Gina Carano has never fought in the UFC. She made her claim to fame in Strikeforce and I believe Elite XC. So what are we going to do here? It would have been huge. December card, ends the year, ends the era, the ESPN era for the UFC. But as history unfolded, Gina Carano, they were going to have this fight. Dana White was paying both women the money that they wanted, or at least the money that they agreed upon, and it was going to be huge. Alas, Gina Carano dropped the ball, could not get in shape in time for the December card, but said she'd be ready by January, and this was going to be the first card of the Paramount era. But Dana White said they could not deliver the numbers that they were going to pay the women just 1 month prior. And I know that looks bad on Dana, and I know that looks bad on the UFC. But at the end of the day, the structure changed. Yeah, the UFC's worth a ton of money. Yeah, we get it. But Paramount's coming in, swinging D, talk about, look, bro, we got shareholders, we doing our thing. Y'all need to deliver, and we not get ready to pay top dollar. We already paying you $7.7 billion. That's already top dollar. And yeah, the UFC could have opened up their pocketbook, their purse, and paid out, but it didn't work out. Regardless, Ronda Rousey is taking that truth, twisting it, turning it, and making it out like Dana White said F her and Gina Carano, and the UFC said F both of y'all. We don't want to do business, when in actuality, business was going to be done if Gina Carano could have got her, beautiful I might add, Mandalorian A up and went out, trained, and got ready for the fight. Nevertheless, it's not happening. Ronda Rousey is trying to change the history, but who cares? None of us are really fans of how the company is working right now, being the UFC or Dana White, so who cares? Point is, here they are. Jake Paul swoops in, pays in the money that they want or they agreed upon, and here we are. I say all of that to say this. Ronda Rousey should go in there and easily defeat Gina Carano. Gina Carano was always a striker, but she was a very rudimentary striker compared to more modern female mixed martial artists or strikers, right? She had a little bit of a Muay Thai background, all of those things. Of course, we all know the history of Ronda Rousey. We know where her bread is buttered. It is grappling. It's not so much wrestling, but grappling and a judo style of ground game, right? one of the original MMA fighters to have a finisher, much like wrestling, or WWE, I should say, being the armbar finish. Ronda Rousey should go out there and beat Gina Carano. Ronda Rousey is terrible on the feet, always has been, despite a knockout over Melquizael. But still, she's still terrible on the feet. Gina Carano was decent on the feet, good for her day on the feet. But if Gina wasn't ready to make the fight originally, when it would have been all the pomp and circumstance with the UFC, she wasn't in shape. Yeah, she's lost weight. She physically looks in shape now, but I would say she looks more of cardio, I lost weight in shape. Not in shape, right? A lot of the time you see some fighters come in and they make the weight, but you can tell by the looseness of their skin, somewhat muscle definition or tone, but not much. The muscles aren't popping, so to speak. That means they made weight and they're in good cardio shape, but not in the best overall physical shape, strength shape. Just because you ran a lot of miles and did a lot of cardio and sweated it out and dehydrated yourself in the sauna to make weight is not the same as coming in shape. Ronda Rousey looks to be in shape. Muscles are popping. Definition. You can tell she's maintained some level of a dietary, a regimen. Gina Carano doesn't look like that. Gina Carano obviously going to be the bigger woman stepping in there, but still, Ronda Rousey got traps. Ronda Rousey, the traps is popping, looking a little sus if I might add. But nevertheless, bro, Ronda Rousey looks in much better shape. Ronda never necessarily had the best takedowns, or if any at all, but Ronda can figure out a way to judo. I will use this as an adjective, judo her to the ground. And I think she gets the submission finish. I'm not sure if she's going to get her with an arm bar, but there's a good chance that she will. But I think she gets Gina on the ground, and I think she taps her. I think she's going to get a submission finish here. Shout out to both women. I know Ronda's going to make this out to be the biggest MMA fight of all time, and that her and Gina are going to hold the record of the biggest MMA card of all time because they plastered it on Netflix, which is in just about every household in America. And so essentially it's going to be a free fight. I get it. It is what it is. A Karen gon' Karen. They gonna rewrite history. That's just how it is. Ronda Rousey for the win. How about Frank the Tank, Francis Ngannou, stepping in the cage. Once again, I almost said the octagon with Felipe Lins. Look, man, you can say what you want about Francis Ngannou in the cage and out of the cage. Say what you want about him leaving the UFC. Say what you want about him treating the PFL as his side piece that he really didn't give a F about. His main being boxing, and that's a weird thing to say considering what he was to the UFC. But Francis Ngannou should go in here and obliterate Felipe Lins in round 1. If it goes to round 2, Francis needs to reevaluate his training. But either way, I see Francis going out there and not even so much beating the brakes off Felipe Lins. I think it's more of a matter of, and I would probably, depending on how many strikes they're labeling Francis Ngannou and Felipe Lins at, I would look on the under in strikes for both of these men if you're on the correct betting apps, in my opinion. Shout out to DraftKings, shout out to Underdog Fantasy, which I do a lot of my betting with. Nevertheless, Francis Ngannou shouldn't even, beat the brakes off of him. It should be a few solid landed shots, if not one. Drop Felipe Lins and he's finished. So I got Francis Ngannou by finish. How about Nate Diaz stepping back into MMA, back into the cage, not in the octagon, against Mike Perry, who is also back from bare knuckle boxing fame. Look, shout out to Mike Perry. Mike Perry's one of these guys that left the UFC, went out here and made a huge name for himself in combat sports, has made a ton of money. But at the same time, Nate Diaz, who was already a household name in mixed martial arts in the UFC, has gone out here and has made a huge name for himself, a bigger name for himself outside of the UFC, or at least made more money for himself outside of the UFC than what the UFC was willing to pay him. And here we go. And I don't know if this is shocking. I don't know if this is an underdog pick, or it might just be common knowledge for those who know ball nowadays when you're talking about mixed martial arts. I got Mike Perry to go out there and defeat Nate Diaz. Now, I don't think he finishes him at all because Nate Diaz is a tough guy to finish. But in my opinion, what we've seen out of Nate Diaz after his UFC career ended is Nate Diaz, I don't think, has that hunger any longer to win fights. He's made a ton of money in the UFC, and he's made even more money outside of the UFC. And I feel like Nate Diaz leans and relies more on his chin. I think Nate Diaz is the type of dude that knows it's going to be hard for these guys to finish me. I'm going to bleed. I got a lot of scar tissue. It is what it is. But I'm going to make a huge purse. I'm going to make a huge check off this. So yeah, I'll go out there. I'll take a whole lot of punishment. But I'm going to walk away with 5 to 10 million in whatever I do. Probably 5 on the low end for some fights he's had recently. And man, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to make it all the way to the bell. I won't get finished. It doesn't look too bad on my jacket or on my track, my resume, you know. But, man, I can take a hit. I can take a punch. And I'll go out here and I'll make, you know, these tens of millions of dollars. And chill out, man. Ain't really too much of a big deal. It's like a journeyman's... It's like a journeyman's mentality, but we're playing with millions of dollars when you're talking about Nate Diaz. And so when you think of journeymen, when journeymen go out there and get their head bashed in for 100K, 60K, 50K, 40K, and just keep on doing it over time, what you think a man's going to do when he's got 10 to 12, 15 million on the line? Yeah, Nate Diaz will go out there. He'll come in a good enough shape to make it to the end, but he won't really be in good shape. We haven't seen him look toned or in good shape in years. So, man, Mike Perry goes out there, gets the decision win in his return to mixed martial arts as well as Nate Diaz's. So, that's what I see going down on the big three fights on the MVP on Netflix MMA card. Let's move on over to the UFC, who are back in the world famous Apex Arena, where in the main event, Arnold Allen steps in there with Melquizael Costa. Look, I'm going to go along with the sneaky, tricky underdog pick of Melquizael Costa. I'm saying that because, yeah, Arnold Allen is very skilled. Arnold Allen is very good. But Arnold Allen, bro, man, I just don't think he's going to quite get there in the UFC. I definitely don't believe he'll ever be a champion, of course. But I just see him as being a guy that lose a few fights, win a few fights, lose a few, win a few. As we're about to enter into, not saying he's anywhere close to the twilight or the end of his career. You know, he's about to be at about the middle, I'd say. And I don't see it being a trajectory taking him up into the top. I mean, he might be able to get into the top 5, maybe. And I'm saying that if he loses to an unranked Costa, I mean, maybe on a good run and a lot of luck and a lot of blessings, he could make it to number 5. He's number 7 right now. I'm sorry. Costa is ranked at number 12. But, man, I think the UFC sees a little bit in Costa, given his recent performances. And I could see Costa having, I'm not saying he'll ever make it to the title, but I could see Costa having a Charles Oliveira type rise at featherweight. I don't think he'll ever gain the championship. But you know how Charles Oliveira at lightweight just kind of snuck up? He was winning some fights and then you looked up and he's in the top 5 and then he's the champion. It's kind of like, whoa. I don't think Costa's going to make it to be a title holder, but I could see that. And this might be completely far-fetched. I know Arnold Allen got a lot of fans. But it's just, I look at Arnold Allen like a very, very skilled fighter who could beat a lot of top contenders, but at any given time could take a L to a lower ranked contender. And that's what I see happening here. I got Costa to go out there and defeat Arnold Allen. It's a 3-round fight. I don't think there's a chance that Costa could knock out or TKO Arnold Allen, but I definitely do think there's a world where he could submit him. So if he finishes Arnold Allen to be via submission, probably in about the 2nd or 3rd round, definitely not the 1st, but more than likely I think Costa cruises to a 3-round decision over Arnold Allen. Then in the co-main event, we have Doo Ho Choi stepping in the octagon with Daniel Santos. Man. Taking a look at this. You know, I think in this one, let's see, Doo Ho Choi coming off a win over Billy Algeo. Nate Landwehr, a draw with Kyle Nelson. Tricky. Santos has been on a slight tear. I'm going to go along with the favorite being, his nickname is Willie Cat or Wiley Cat, Daniel Santos. I'm going to go along with I keep calling him Daniel Santos to go out there and get the win. I kind of see, if there's a finish in this, it's going to be via Santos, but it could just be a 3-round, kind of an action-packed decision win by Daniel Santos. But I'm going to go along with Daniel Santos to get the win. So, that is the MMA for this weekend. You know, I got Rousey in the main event of the Netflix card. I've got Costa in the main event of the UFC card. So please let me know what you think. Let me know who you got winning these 5 fights. You know, because your boy will be betting. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. And once again, guys, I do want to thank you for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time. Peace.